I'm not quite sure.
Okay. Asil, have you started the YouTube?
Yes.
It's starting now. It's just
All right.
loading.
Okay. Hani, can you please check the quality of YouTube?
I will be sending you the link for the YouTube channel.
Nice good. I can see.
Asil, have you started the YouTube?
Oh,
We've got 7 people watching.
Yeah, I checked already. Yeah, it's okay.
there's already people watching.
People watching. Wait, how to see whether got 8 people.
8 people.
9. It's increasing.
We've got 7 people watching.
Yeah, I checked already. Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Here
Okay. Oh, please mute it.
Oh, because I haven't viewed it. Sorry.
That's okay. Are you logging in from the YouTube channel itself so that you can reply to them as ACOM?
How to see whether got 8 people.
8 people.
9.
Yeah. And you need to mute the mic here. Okay, so that's working.
Are you logging in from the YouTube channel itself so that you can reply to them as ACOM?
Okay, it's almost 2:50 now. Should we let the participants in?
Yes.
Okay. And you need to mute the mic here. Okay, so that's working.
Dr. Young, I want to ask, should I do the recording or you should do the recording or should we both do the recording?
You do the recording, Asil.
Okay.
Once it starts, then only you start the recording.
Okay.
All right. Okay, we can start to let people in. Then Asil, maybe you project the backdrop. Hani, are you emitting the people?
You want me to admit people?
Can you do that?
Can.
All right, then you just emit all and
Okay.
keep emitting people. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Asil, you're in the lab.
I was in the lab, now I'm at the postgraduate area. So there's no people here.
That is the student lounge, is it?
Yeah,
Nice. Okay.
yeah. But the lighting is very bad. This is the second one.
Hi, Eva.
Yes.
Would you like me to keep track of the timing for you?
Yes, please.
Okay. So roughly how long?
Give me 45 minutes.
All right. So 45 minutes, I will.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah. I may go to 50, but I will try to do it in 45 so that people are not too tired.
Okay, sure.
Doctor, should I share the link for the YouTube live as well in the chat?
Maybe you can wait for a little while.
I have just sent you one question, Chai Hong, whether it can be put into the quiz if possible.
Okay, I will send it to Asil.
Yes.
Doctor, will you, can you send it to me on WhatsApp?
Yeah, you want me to send you on WhatsApp?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
No worries. Yeah, I sent to you, Asil.
Okay.
Asil, you need to make Eva and Aecom as the co-host.
Yes. I think they already are because Prof. Ava just
I was
shared
able to share the screen.
Oh, yeah. But I didn't see it in the name list. Don't know why. Okay, that's right. Okay, we have 46 participants and people are still coming in. We have more than 400 registrants.
Oh my. How many on the YouTube?
Honey, how many on YouTube now? I can see 30 now. 30 is watching from YouTube.
Dr. Young, can you check the polling? Is it 2 polls right now in the Zoom meeting?
Yeah, I see 2 questions.
And then from the top, poll 1, and then can you change it to top to?
Okay, so polling 1 got 2 questions. Polls number 2 got 1 question. Is that right?
Yeah, but I think I have a problem with my side because it's not showing the second poll.
Oh, you have to click on the top,
Yeah,
the arrow.
it's not showing me an arrow. I think because my Zoom isn't.
I see. So if you can't do it later, you just let me know. I can launch it here.
Okay.
Any musics, Asil?
The thing is, if I put music, the live YouTube will could flag it for copyright.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so it's better not to.
Ah, okay. Okay, 59 in Zoom,
Very good.
40 in YouTube. Quite surprised, huh? People
Yes.
also prefer YouTube.
Yeah.
Ah, I see Virginia is coming.
Yes, yes, she did say.
Ah. Hi, Virginia. Are you here?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Hi. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I think it will be very interesting.
Yeah, we have very eminent speakers here.
Well, I don't know about
Indeed.
that.
Virginia, it
All
must
the
be
best for every success. It's 9 o'clock here.
nice. Yeah, that's nice.
Congratulations and every success for the workshop.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
We can see people from Philippines, and I see some from Taiwan and many other countries. Nurma Zaina, Ina. Hi, Ina.
Hi, Chai Hong.
Ina, you joining from office?
Yeah,
Nice. Thank you for joining.
thank you very much.
Okay, it's 3 o'clock now. We still have people coming in. Let's wait another 1 minute.
Okay.
Nice. Thank you for joining. Asil?
Yes, Doctor.
Hi, Asil. Once I start, then you can start recording, and then you can post the YouTube link in the chat room.
Okay.
All right. Oh, the numbers is increasing rapidly. So we have almost 100 in Zoom and 55 on YouTube. Okay, it's 302 now. Shall I start, Eva, Aecom?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the ACOM workshops. This is the 13th ACOM workshops. The theme is on radiobiology in the era of precision medicine. We have our eminent speakers here. Today we have two speakers with us, Professor Dr. Eva Bezak from Australia and Dr. Aecom Ng from Malaysia. Asil, can you please go next? All right, before we start, just let me give some announcement on the housekeeping rules. I will be the moderator for this session. Please turn off your audio and video during the sessions. And this workshop is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube. The link has been shared in the Zoom chat box. You can refer if you would like to watch it on YouTube as well. And please post your questions and comments in the chat box. It can be either on Zoom or YouTube. Please fill in the feedback form at the end of the workshop to receive your certificate. Next, Asil. So this will be the schedule for today. We will invite Professor Dr. Kwan Hong Ng, who is the director of ACOM, to give a few minutes speech, opening speech, then followed by the first speaker, Dr. Aecom Ng, then followed by Professor Dr. Eva Bezak. And we will leave all the questions and comments in the end of the sessions. Hopefully we will have more time for discussion, about 20 to 30 minutes. So without further ado, let me invite the director of
Welcome,
ACOM, Professor Dr. Kwan Hong Ng, to give his welcome speech. Thank you.
to the ACOM course. My name is Kwan Hong Ng from Malaysia. I'm the director of ACOM. The ASEAN College of Medical Physics, ACOM, welcomes you to this course. And its origin is in the ASEAN, consists of 10 nations in Southeast Asia. And the ASEAN nations have extremely diverse culture and custom and various lifestyles and fascinating natural beauties, sceneries, tourist attractions, as well as historical and archaeological, religious sites. This is a very interesting Southeast Asian nations. The idea of ACOM was conceived and formed in October 2014 in Ho Chi Minh City, and these are the founding fathers and mothers of this ACOM, and it was launched officially at the World Congress 2015 in Toronto, and these were the people who were present at the launch of the ASEAN College of Medical Physics. Objective of ACOM are threefold: to enhance the standard and quality of education and training of medical physicists, and to provide continuing professional development, the CPD programs, and to promote the continuing competence of medical physics practitioners. And before ACOM was formally formed, we have various so-called embryonic activities, and these were supported by the various international organizations such as the AAPM, the ISAP, IOMP. So we thank those organizations for helping us, to supporting us. So we have in Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, And then the first ACOM workshop was held in May 2015 in Kuala Lumpur, the AEPM, IOMP, ISAT Imaging Physics workshop, and then followed by Yogyakarta, Kuala Lumpur, Bangkok, Bandung, Iloilo, Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur again, and then Denpasar. And also last year we have been first time virtually in Phuket, and also recently in Depok in Indonesia, again a virtual event just March last month. And now we look forward to the 13th ACOM course, and here it is, the radiobiology in the era of precision medicine. This was put together by two coordinators, Associate Professor Dr. Chai Hong Yong from Taylor's University, and Dr. Ek Hao Ng from the Hospital Kuala Lumpur. And we will have this over 3 days, and we are privileged to have 6 eminent speakers, experts in radiobiology, with Professor Eva Bezak and Dr. Ek Hao Ng and Dr. Wendy Phillips. Also, we have Professor Fuad Ismail. He's a radiation oncologist, and you have also Dr. Jake Foster and Professor Lodana Maku. So we thank all of you, the speakers, lecturers, for supporting us in this course. And what is of note is that this course is organized and offered to the global medical physics community free of charge. And so far, we have some 300 medical physicists who have registered for this excellent program. So we look forward to that. And once again, we welcome all the participants and lecturer speakers to the 13th the ACOM course. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Ng, for your opening speech. Professor Ng currently is running another section on Zoom, so he will join us slightly later. So this is the schedule for today's workshop. All right. Sorry, can I please ask all the participants to mute your mic and your video, please? Okay, thank you. So currently we have 113 participants in Zoom, and we have 65 are watching live from YouTube. So please, for all the participants, please feel free to post your questions or any comments. You can do that in Zoom or YouTube. We will attend your questions in the end of the workshops. So this is the schedule for today. We have put on a series of lectures on radiobiology, and because it's a very heavily mathematics as well as physics lectures, we split it into 3 days. So it will be consecutively 3 Fridays, and we'll start at 3 to 5 p.m. Malaysia time. So today we will have 2 lectures. The first lecture is Radiobiology of Tissue Interaction with Radiation, will be given by Dr. Ek Hao Ng. Before I proceed, I would like to introduce our speaker today. Dr. Ek Hao Ng, who is a senior medical physicist in the Department of Radiotherapy and Oncology, Kuala Lumpur Hospital, and Nuclear Medicine Department at the National Cancer Institute. Dr. Ng obtained his PhD from the University of Nottingham in Radiological and Imaging Science, focusing on the translation of a laboratory prototype handheld gamma camera into clinical use. He is the founder and chairman of the Ministry of Health Medical Physics Research Task Group in Malaysia. He also served as a physics advisory editor for Medical Dosimetry, the official journal of the American Association of Medical Dosimetries. Without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Ng to give his lecture. Dr. Ng, please.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to ACOM for providing this training and education platform. My name is Ek Hao Ng, medical physicist from the Kuala Lumpur Hospital and National Cancer Institute Malaysia. We are practicing the knowledge of radiobiology in our daily clinical work. Either you are working in the field of radiotherapy, nuclear medicine, or diagnostic radiology. Before we listen to other advanced topics from our distinguished speakers, let us recap on some important terms and concepts in radiobiology. It is my great pleasure to share with you about the radiobiology of tissue interaction with radiation. The objective of this lecture are to understand the characteristic of ionizing radiation, the concept of linear energy transfer, cell cycle and cell death, radiobiological damage of cell by radiation, and the firearms of radiotherapy. Since the discovery of X-ray by Wilhelm Röntgen in 1895 and the discovery of radioactivity by Heinrich Becquerel in 1896, these remarkable discoveries had enormous significance to the field of modern physics, either in industry or medicine. It is difficult to envision 21st century's medical practice without the ability to image bone, vessel, and all aspects of human body invasively. The top left corner image shows the first X-ray photograph of Mr. Röntgen's wife's hand. Image in the middle was developed by using radiation that spontaneously emitted in uranium source that registered on a photographic plan. These were developed in the experiment by Mr. Becquerel. Since then, the technologies have been widely used in medicine, including imaging and therapeutic purposes. After years of application, the scientists had realized about the potential health effects due to the long-term or high dose rate exposure of ionizing radiation. The knowledge of radiobiology and radioprotection has increasingly become more significant. Radiobiology is a branch of sciences which combines the basic principles of physics and biology and is concerned with the action of ionizing radiation on biological tissues and living organisms. It is a study of basic radiobiological mechanisms, deals with biological effects produced by energy absorption in small volumes corresponding to single cells or parts of the cells. Therefore, when we talk about radiation medicine, radiobiology is an important aspect in the diagnostic applications, while it is considered to be essential in the therapeutic applications. These basic principles are used in radiation therapy with the objective to treat cancer with minimal damage to the normal tissues. For example, the dose prescription of radiotherapy treatment for an early stage breast cancer patient is 40 gray in 15 fractions over the 3 weeks. This fractionated treatment enables a few courses of photon irradiation of less than 2 grays to the targets. This treatment regime might have changed in some centers recently to hyperfractionation as suggested by the Fast Forward trial, which is 26 gray in 5 fractions over a week. In view with current clinical evidence, practicality and cost effectiveness. With the rapidly change in medical practices and technology advancement, the modern treatment poses challenges and opportunities in radiobiology. We can see some examples such as the RMRT, which allows dose heterogeneity and the high dose rate perfractions in SRS and SRT cases. More recently, with the advancement in the precision medicine and the development of the theranostic in nuclear medicine, this has brought the attention of the scientists to discuss further about these issues. Now, let's move to the type of radiation. Electromagnetic spectrum is a range of frequency of electromagnetic radiation and its respective energies and frequencies. You can see from your right radio wave towards to your left gamma rays. With the increasing of frequency, the shorter the wavelength. Radiation is classified into two main groups: non-ionizing radiation, or called as NIR, and ionizing radiation. For NIR, the energy of the radiation is not adequate to ionize the matters, but when it interacts with matters, it can cause excitation. However, for ionizing radiation, the energy of the radiation is adequate to ionize the matter. This is in particular interest when we talk about radiobiology. For ionizing radiation, it can classify into two categories, which is directly and indirectly ionizing radiation. For directly ionizing radiation, which involve charged particles such as electrons, protons, alpha particles, and heavy ions, when it interacts with matters, it can straightaway deposit the dose to the medium. For indirectly ionizing radiation, which involve neutral particles or electromagnetic such as photons and neutrons, it will interact with the charged particles and only will deposit the dose. The figures at the bottom shows the different type of ionizing radiation and its penetrative powers. On the top is the alpha, which is the heaviest charged particles among three with less penetrative powers. It can be stopped by a piece of paper. Beta or electron is relatively lighter than alpha, and it can be penetrated better and can be blocked by aluminium. For gamma photon, which is the neutral electromagnetic wave, it has to be blocked by a piece of lead, where the penetrative power is higher among three. As mentioned just now, if radiation is absorbed in biologic material, ionization and excitation occur in a pattern that depends on the type of radiation, whether it is non-ionizing or ionizing radiation. The heavier particles with large charge can produce higher ionization density, and for a given particle type, the energy or the velocity of the particle type is inversely proportional to the density of ionization. In order to define the quality of an ionizing radiation beam, the linear energy transfer is used. International Commission on Radiation Unit and Measurement, ICRU, has defined LED as the quotient dE over dL, where dE is the average energy locally imparted to the medium by a charged particle or specific energy in transversing over distance of dL. And the unit of LED is keV over micrometer. This is different with the stopping power, which focus attention on the energy lost by a charged particle moving through a medium. But LED is focusing on how much of energy absorbed when it travels over the medium. Here are some typical LED values for commonly used radiation. For example, 250 kVp X-ray has an LED values of 2. When we compare with a higher energy X-ray, the 3 MeV X-ray, the LED value is 0.3. This has indicated that when the energy of the X-ray is higher, it has a higher penetrative power, and when it interacts with the medium, it deposits a less dose over a certain distance. And when we compare 3 MeV X-ray with 1 MeV electron, due to the similar energies, the LED value is quite similar as well. For LED values for other or less commonly used radiation, 14 MeV neutron, the LED value is 12. Heavy charged particle, it ranges from 100 to 200. For 1 keV electrons, 12.3, and the higher electrons energy, 10 keV, it is 2.3. Just to reiterate that the LET value depends on the kinetic energy or the velocity of the electron. The LET is inversely related to the electron density. As a electron loss energy, its velocity decrease and the value of LET increase until all its energy is dissipated. This table shows the range of the LET values with the increasing electron energies. It ranges from 0.2 up to 12 keV per micrometer. This schematic diagram shows the effect of LET of a particles when it travels across the DNA target. With a lower value of LET, the chances of ionization across the pathway is lesser. If the LET value is increasing, you can see that more events is happening along the medium. And there are more chances of ionization or excitation could be happen at the DNA regions. Therefore, the higher the LET, the higher the probability of direct interactions. This is a classical paradigm of radiation injury, giving us an overview on what will happen over the time period. When the ionizing radiation interacts with metal, it will cause excitation, which will translate as a heat. It may also cause ionization, where more free radicals will be formed, and we will talk more about this in the next few slides. Chemical repair, or the ion can be recombined at this stage as well, and all this will take place in the order of seconds. When ionization occurs, it might damage the DNA. The DNA might undergo repair. However, when this is not successful, cell death or the DNA mutation might happen. For cell death, it can be either early effects or late effects, or even if the fetus is involved, it might cause the developmental effects to the fetus. For DNA mutation, when it is involved the germline, it might cause the effects to the offspring. And where it involved with the somatic cells, the cancer can be induced. And all this will take place from days to years. All this radiation injury or biological effects take place in a living organism. Now, we talk more about the cell. All living entities are made up of protoplasm, which consists of inorganic and organic compounds that dissolve in water. The smallest unit of protoplasm capable of independent existence. The basic microscopic unit of all living organisms. There are two main constituents of a cell, which are the cytoplasm and the nucleus. The cytoplasm is the liquid surrounding the nucleus, and the nucleus contains the genetic information, which is the DNA, and this is in particular interest when we talk about radiobiology. Outside the protoplasm is surrounded by the membrane. Human cells are either somatic cells or germ cells. Germ cells are either a sperm or an egg. All other human cells are called somatic cells. The cells propagate through division. The division of somatic cells is called mitosis and result in two genetically identical daughter cells. For the germ cells, it is called meiosis and it involves two fission of the nucleus giving rise to 4 sex cells, each possessing half the number of chromosomes of the original germ cells. Cell proliferation cycle is defined by 2 times period, where mitosis is indicated by the capital letter M, where division takes place. The period of DNA synthesis is indicated by the capital letter S. S and M portions of the cell cycles are separated by two periods called gaps, G1 and G2, when respectively the DNA has not yet been synthesized or has been synthesized but other metabolic processes are taking place. The duration between successive division is called the cell cycle time. Cell cycle time for mammalian cells is of the order of 10 to 20 hours. The S phase is usually in the range of 6 to 8 hours. M phase is less than an hour. G2 is in the range of 2 to 4 hours, and G1 is in the range of 1 to 8 hours. Other facts and definition that we need to know of are, for stem cell in certain tissues, the cell cycle time is up to 10 days. The cells are most radiosensitive in the M and G2 phases and most radioresistant in the late S phase. Cell cycle time of malignant cells is shorter than that of some normal tissue cells, but during regeneration after injury, normal cells can proliferate faster. Cell death of non-proliferating cells is defined as the loss of a specific function. Cell death for stem cells and other cells capable of many divisions is defined as the loss of reproductive integrity, or is called as reproductive death. Cell nucleus contains sensitive component for radiation-induced cell killing, not in the cytoplasm. When directly ionizing radiation is absorbed in biological material, damage to the cell may occur in one of two mechanisms. It can be either direct or indirect actions. For direct action in cell damage by radiation, most of the particulate radiation interacts directly with the critical targets in the cell. The atoms of the target itself may be ionized or excited through column interactions, leading to the change of physical and chemical events that eventually produce the biological damage. Dominantly process interaction of high LET particles such as neutrons or alpha particles with biological material. For indirect action caused by X-ray or gamma ray photons, the photon interact with an atom in the cell, produce a charged particle such as electron or positron, which subsequently interacts with the DNA. The radiation interacts with other molecules and atoms. 80% of the mass of a living cell is water, so the free radical will produce within the cell. A complex series of chemical changes occurs in water, which is called water radiolysis. Through diffusion in the cell, free radicals damage the critical target within the cell. This indirect action can be modified by chemical sensitizers such as hypoxic sensitizer or radiation protector. When interaction of radiation with water, basic radiochemical reaction that may occur in water molecules causes ionization and excitation process, producing ion radical and subsequently water radicals such as hydroxy radical, hydrogen atom, and hydrated electron. These radicals are highly reactivity towards molecules of cells, which will bring about indirect radiation damage to biological system by reacting and damaging in the molecules in cells. The reason why the free radicals are highly reactive molecules because they have an unpaired valence electron. About 2/3 of the biological damage by low LET radiation, spatially ionizing radiation such as X-ray and electron, is due to indirect actions, and 1/3 is due to direct actions. Steps that involve in producing biological damage by the indirect action of X-ray are as follows. Primary photon interacts produce a high energy electrons or positron, and this is a physics process. High energy light charged particle in moving through tissue produce free radicals in water. This is a chemistry process. And then the free radical may produce chemical change in DNA from the breakage of chemical bond. Subsequently, changes in chemical bonds result in biological effects. This timescale shows the effects of radiation exposure on biological systems. The physics of the process takes of the order of 10 power of minus 15 seconds. The ion radical have a lifetime of the order of 10 power of minus 10 seconds, and the free radicals have a lifetime of the order of 10 power of minus 5 seconds. The steps between the breakage of bond and the biological effects may take hours, days, or years. Now, let's move to the firearms in radiotherapy. Radiation therapy has traditionally been a fractionated treatment course spread over several weeks. Take advantage of differential repair abilities of normal and malignant tissues. Typically produce better tumor control for a given level of normal tissue toxicity than a single large dose. The most important biological factors influencing the response of tumors and normal tissues to fractionated treatments are often called the 5 R's: repair, repopulation, redistribution, re-oxygenation, and radiosensitivity. Repair of sublethal damage to cells between fractions caused by radiation. For single-strain break, little biologic consequences because they are repaired readily using the opposite strain as a template. For double-strain breaks, not usually repairable if the breaks are close together, may result in cell killing, carcinogenesis, or mutation. For the repopulation, both normal and cancer tissue proliferate during the course of therapy. This has resulted to the regrowth of cells between the fractions. Hence, it increased the number of cells during the course of the treatment and reduced the overall response to irradiation. This is important in early responding normal tissue such as skin, GI tract, or in tumor whose stem cells are capable of rapid proliferation. Little consequences in late responding, slowly proliferating tissue such as kidney. For redistribution, it is related to the cell cycle effect. Variation in the radiosensitivity of cells in different phases of the cell cycle results in the cells in the more resistant phases being more likely to survive a dose of radiation. Two effects can make the cell's population more sensitive to a subsequent dose of radiation. Some of the cells will be blocked in the G2 phases of the cycle, which is usually a sensitive phase. Second, some of the surviving cells will redistribute into more sensitive part of the cell cycles. For re-oxygenation, it is related to the oxygen effect. Oxygen is a powerful radiation sensitizer. So, tumors that are poorly oxygenated, such as hypoxic tumor, tends to be resistant. Hypoxic tumor can re-oxygenate during a course of treatment, separated in time sufficient for re-oxygenation to occur and become more radiosensitive. For radiosensitivity, it is to explain at the mechanistic level the different radioresponsiveness of the disease. It is worth noting that for different individuals, the radiosensitivity among the normal cells and the tumor cells will be different. Cells from different types of tumor differ markedly in their inherent radiosensitivity. This table shows the sensitivity of different tumors. For example, for highly sensitive, such as germ cell tumor, multiple myeloma, up to the lower resistance such as sarcoma, adenocarcinoma. Based on the current research development and publication, it is suggested that the 6 hours should be aided. However, it varies between remote bystander effects or reactivation of anti-tumor immune response. Bystander effect is the phenomenon in which unirradiated cells exhibit irradiated effects as a result of signals received from nearby irradiated cells. For reactivation, it is believed that radiotherapy is able to modify the tumor environment and to induce systemic and immune-mediated anti-tumor response. Some bring home messages. Linear energy transfer is the average energy locally imparted to the medium by a charged particle or specific energy traveled through a distance. This is in the unit of keV over micrometer. Cells are most radiosensitive in the M and G2 phases and most radioresistant in the late S phase. For direct action, the radiation interacts directly with the cell's nucleus. For indirect actions, the radiation interacts with water molecules, produce free radicals such as hydrated electron, hydroxy radical, and hydrogen atom, and then damage cell nucleus. The timescale of the effect for physics, free radicals, and biologicals are different as here. For 5 hours, it involves repair, repopulation, redistribution along cell cycle, re-oxygenations, and radiosensitivity. And most recently involved the 6 hour, which varies from removed bystander effects or reactivation of anti-tumor immune response. These are the references, and thank you for your attention. Thank you, everyone. So when we are designing this course, we'll like to encourage more participation from the audience. That's why we have chosen 2 questions for everyone to participate. So Azil, can you please put on the poll? Right. For those participants who join using the Zoom platform, you can choose your answer. Can you see the poll now, everyone? Chai Hong, can you see the poll?
Yes, we can see the poll, Dr. Ng.
Right. So please make a selection.
Aecom, thank you so much for your excellent lectures.
Thank you.
It's a very good refresh of the basic radiobiology. I'm not sure if you can see the screen, but the polling is ongoing and we can see the results in live. Will you be able to see, Aecom?
Yeah.
That's nice. For those people in YouTube, we have 73 participants in YouTube. You can also participate if you want. If you are seeing the questions on YouTube, you can answer it in the chat box. Maybe you can put questions 1, then ABCD, question 2, ABCD. Oh, I'm sorry, someone just telling me that in YouTube, they cannot see the questions. I'm sorry for that.
Okay, can we exhibit the polling result now. Azil, would you like to take over the result?
Dr. Young, can you show from your side, please?
Okay, do you want me to end the polling now? All right, so the result is popping on my screen. I'm not sure if you can see it. Do you see it, Asil? Eva, do you see the results on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, that's nice. So Dr. Ng may not see the results, right?
Okay, so just to recap the previous lecture. So for the free radical, you'll be 10 power of minus 5 second. So the answer should be, sorry for the technical error here. So probably
10 milliseconds.
Yes, Aecom?
Yep. Okay. So the answer should be 10 power of minus 5 second for the free radicals.
Yeah, which is 10 milliseconds on the screen.
Microseconds.
Yeah, micro.
Micro.
Yeah. So sorry for the type. Okay. So shall we move to the second one? The following concepts are included in the 5 R's in the radiotherapy accept. Re-oxygenation, yes. Radiosensitivity, yes. Repair, yes. Recirculation, no. I think everybody got the answer correct. Well done, everyone.
Excellent.
All right, so shall I pass back to you, Chai Hong?
Yeah, thank you very much, Aecom. Yeah, sorry, I just noticed the questions, there are some errors there. So the answer is 10 microseconds, right?
Right.
Yes.
Sorry for the typo error.
Okay, so to everyone, so the answer is 10 microsecond, and we got 33% of participants answered it correctly. And we have 94 votes, which is, we have very active participation from our audience. Thank you so much for your participation. Okay, so hold on, let me stop. Okay, so thanks again, Dr. Ng, for your excellent lectures. We got some comments from the audience, but we will attend to them in the end of the sessions. Is that all right? Okay, before we proceed to the next speaker, I would like to repeat some announcement here again. First, please turn off your audio and video except the speakers. And this workshop is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube. And the YouTube link can be accessed in the Zoom chat room. Currently, we have 72 watching from YouTube, and we have about 150 in Zoom. Please post your questions or comments in the chat box in either Zoom or YouTube, and we'll attend to your questions in the end of the sessions. And we will be giving certificates, and please fill up a feedback form just for us to improve our future workshops, and fill in your names and also your emails so that we can send the certificate to you. Okay, thank you. Asil, can we move to the next slide? Okay, our next speaker is a privilege for me to introduce Professor Dr. Eva Bezak from University of South Australia. Prof. Bezak is a very famous face in Malaysia. She became our mentor since many years ago. She is a professor in medical radiations and currently the Center Director for Translational Cancer Research in the University of South Australia. She is the current Secretary General for IOMP and the Vice President of Aecom.
Tadi Kak Wahyu bilang sendiri. Reza.
I'm sorry, there are some background noise just now. Professor Bezak also is the former president of ACP-ACM, as well as the external member of AC4 IUPAP. Prof. Bezak and her group are the national leaders in radiation biology modeling using Monte Carlo algorithms. They developed a new microdosimetry measurement technique for detection of alpha particles for use in targeted alpha therapy using the time peaks detector, which was developed in CERN and is one of the most exciting microdosimeters on the market. Prof. Bezak has published definitely more than 160 papers, 280 conference presentations, and co-authored books on medical physics. Prof. Bezak, please.
Thank you, Chai Hong, for your kind introduction, and thank you for your invitation to have me to present at this meeting. I will start sharing my screen.
Yes, thank you.
Let me just make sure that I can share the screen. Share. Okay, are you able to see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, wonderful. So thank you, everyone. So you will spend exciting 45 minutes with me, where I will be talking about radiation biology modeling. I will cover concepts such as linear quadratic model, tumor control probability, normal tissue control probability. I will talk a bit about the data that we use for these models, and also we'll finish with an example of using BioSuite software that will allow you to do biological comparison of treatment plans. Unfortunately, I have to warn you, there will be a lot of equations, so I will try to make them as simple as possible. Let's see how we go. So you are very all aware that today up to 50% of cancer patients should receive some form of radiation therapy as part of their treatment. A key advantage of radiation oncology is that it is a very effective and non-invasive anti-cancer treatment without any associated mortality risk. And radiation therapy contributes towards 40% of cancer cures, which is comparable to surgery for the fraction of the cost as compared to chemotherapy. However, it is associated with side effects. So really the premise of radiation cell kill in radiation oncology is fine-tuning the balance or the therapeutic ratio between the tumor control probability, which you would like to be 100% because you are trying to eradicate all the cancer cells, while you are minimizing the normal tissue damage or normal tissue control probability of surrounding healthy tissues. And this point here is a useful therapeutic windows where the dose that corresponds to a nice separation within these two curves between the TCP and NTCP is the ideal dose to be prescribed to a patient. So how are these TCP and NTCP curves built? It's not very simple. They are built in each clinic, organization with multiple clinics, or even a country by collecting patient outcomes. These outcomes include cancer-related outcomes, such as survival or progression-free survival, as well as side effects or toxicities. These outcomes then can be correlated to dose distribution in the target volume or cancer, as well as in healthy surrounding healthy tissues or organs at risks. Sometimes the population of data is not enough, so really we should be collecting this data nationally and internationally within the registries. Then you have a team of experts within a clinic that will come up with these correlations between dose volume distributions and your radiobiological tumor control and normal tissue complications probability models. And then they can give you recommendations on prescriptions. Ideally, we don't really care about the tumor. If I could, I would give tumor as high dose as possible, let's say 1,000 grays. But really, that high dose is not achievable because I am limited how much dose I can deliver to the surrounding healthy tissues. But of course, if these curves are being built by collection of data nationally and internationally, this means that these curves are also population averaged and do not necessarily reflect the response of a single patient. The dose volume data, as many of you would know, This dose distribution, let me come back, that I have underneath can be then represented in terms of dose volume histograms. And in the ideal world, I would like to have 100% dose to the 100% of the volume. So nice square graph, but I would like to have 0 dose delivered to 100% of the volume. So for more normal tissue complications, we want this dose distribution data being as close as possible to the 0 dose and to y-axis. So in radiotherapy, we need individualized prescriptions. Let's have a look at this international clinical RTOG trial for head and neck squamous cell carcinomas. And in this trial, the typical prescription of 70 grays were escalated to 80 grays. Yes, they did achieve increase in tumor control probability from 46% to 61%. So on average, for a population base, you would say, oh, this was a great success. But when you think about it, 46% of patients were already well controlled for their disease with 70 gray dose. So by increasing the dose further, I am potentially only increasing their normal tissue complications. And nearly 40% of patients are still not controlled with 80 grays. So population-based TCP curves are good. However, they will not work for every single patient. So how do we resolve this challenge? We need to run more clinical trials. We need more research and development using in vitro animal models, or we can do further advances using computational and radiobiological modeling that would allow us to fine-tune prescriptions for individual radiation sensitivity and radiation response of an individual patient. So radiobiological models are very useful because they allow us to quantify the biological effects of radiation, and they can provide us with prediction of clinical outcomes, either under known conditions, but also for conditions that were not previously measured. Let's say different fractionation schedules. It will also allow us to optimize radiation therapy treatments, let's say if it's combined with chemotherapy. And it will allow us to identify and evaluate radiation risks. And it's not only for the case of radiation therapy, but even, let's say, for the case of the doses to astronauts during the long duration space flights. The types of radiobiological models could be biological, using cell lines or animal models, or with the use of registries, I can use population data. I can use mathematical or analytical models, such as linear quadratic model or two-lesion kinetic model, or I can go fully sophisticated and use computational or stochastic models, such as GN4DNA, Rytrex, and similar. So let's cover some of these models. And really, the bulk of the radiation oncology prescription is based on the linear quadratic model that has been proposed by Jack Fowler in 1972. And this model is used to predict the survival probability of tumor that consists of a number of clonogens with a given alpha and beta values for a given dose D. And this is a graph of the surviving fractions, where you can see that the low LET radiation or sparsely ionizing radiation, as discussed in the previous lecture, has a slowly declining survival curve as a function of radiation dose here on the y-axis, compared to the densely ionizing radiation such as alpha particles or neutrons that has a rapidly declining survival curve at smaller doses of delivered dose. This one becomes nearly linear. Please notice that this is a logarithmic scale on the y-axis, and it's being dominated by the linear component of this linear quadratic model. Because there is a dependence of the survival on the linear function of the dose and quadratic function of the dose, we have the name linear quadratic model. It can be used to predict alternate fractionation schedules. It can be used to prescribe doses. The advantages are that it's a simple mathematical formulations. Interestingly, it gives relatively accurate predictions, but the disadvantages is that we do not often know what the alpha beta values are. They are valid for a very strict set of conditions. It is a macroscopic model. It really doesn't tell me anything what's happening on the cellular level within the DNA. The alpha beta ratios is defining the curviness of the surviving fraction slope, and it really quantifies the fractionation sensitivity of the tissues. The tumors and early responding normal tissues, such as the bone marrow, have alpha beta ratios generally around the value of 10 grays, and that means that these tissues are less sensitive to a change in fractionation, total treatment time, and the dose are most important. Late responding tissues, which are most of the normal tissues, have alpha beta ratios within 1 to 3 grays, and they are most sensitive to a change in dose fractionation. Therefore, hypofractionation, where you are irradiating tissue with the smaller number of fractions with the larger dose per fractions, may be beneficial. Professor Curtis in 1986 proposed the lethal, potentially lethal model, which is actually a microscopic model because it predicts cell survival based on microscopic damages or double strand breaks instead of just macroscopic delivered absorbed dose. It is more sophisticated because it also accounts for dose rate, radiation type, and cellular characteristics. And under certain conditions, it can reduce to your familiar linear quadratic model. So it really represents more accurately the cellular radiation biology, but is mathematically more complicated. I don't need you to understand this model. I will show a graph how to explain it, and you can read about it in literature. But this model is looking at the number of potentially lethal damages to the DNA as a function of dose rate during the irradiation time. And then the surviving fraction of the tumor cell is a function of dose rate, and the treatment that is available for repair after the exposure time before you hit the tumor with another dose of radiation. These two parameters, EPL and eta2PL, are cell type dependent. So this is really what it does. Initially, you will irradiate all viable cells that don't have any lesions inside the tumors. And the radiation can either cause complex double strand breaks that will result in lethal lesions and therefore cell death. This is really corresponding to your parameter alpha in the linear quadratic model. Or it can create potentially lethal damages like simple double strand breaks or single strand breaks of the DNA that are repairable lesions. These can undergo correct repair, and these cells will again enter the cell cycle and can contribute to tumor growth. Or they can be misrepaired, and because they are misrepaired, they can result in the cell death. So now that we have defined the surviving fraction of the tumor, we can define the tumor control probability. That is that first S-shaped curve that determines the success of the treatment. So the tumor control probability is yet another exponential function where it is equal to e to the minus n times surviving fraction, where n is the number of tumor clonogens or clonogenic cancer stem cells, where we can then substitute the linear quadratic model for the surviving fraction. So it's really a double exponential. In this case, because we are dealing with fractionated radiotherapy, small d is dose per fraction, which in the standard radiation therapy, this is 2 grays per fraction, and n is the number of the treatment fraction. The alpha beta data is generally determined in vitro. And when you look at this model and you plug the numbers in, strictly speaking or mathematically speaking, one single cancer cell surviving radiation therapy will reduce tumor treatment control to 37%. As a result, the objective of any radiation therapy is to eradicate all cancer cells. In real life, this is not exactly true because we have other effects like a response of the immune system or bystanders effects that can actually kill or eradicate any remnant cancer cells. So there are lots of problems though with these models because in real patients, the number of clonogens can have varying sensitivities inside a single tumor. They don't have the same alpha beta. You will have different sensitivities between patients. So therefore, you will be dealing with a range of alpha beta values within a patient and between patients. Alpha beta values are also dependent on the cell cycle. And cell kill, as we heard in the previous lecture, depends on the oxygen content inside the cells, and hypoxic cells are more radioresistant. Yet we are expecting that all clonogens must be eradicated. So I very quickly show you a proper equation for tumor control probability calculations that are really the individual populations for an individual averaged over population, where you then having not a single alpha beta ratios, but multiple alpha beta ratios that expresses variation of TCP within a patient and within the population. Andrew Nemirko and Michael Goiten are really the radiological gods when it comes to looking at the tumor control probabilities for population of patients. So I highly recommend to read that article. So we have discussed the first S-shaped curve. Let's now talk about the normal tissue complications probability. The modern knowledge of normal tissue tolerance is based on a seminal publication by Imami, published in 1991. And this is a must for everyone who works in medical physics and radiation biology and radiation oncology. The values of tolerances were based upon uniform irradiation of 28 critical normal tissue structures, and complication rates reported in clinical literature were also compiled. In the same year, Berman published tolerance dose data based on a phenomenological NTCP models proposed by Lyman in 1985. And I will show again a couple of equations and discuss the data that is being used in that model. So this model is once again an exponential function where we are integrating over a parameter t square, where t represents the dose to the organ relative to D50 dose. And D50, sometimes later in my lecture, I will be referring to is as the TD50, is the dose that will produce 50% probability of complications. So where the whole organ is exposed to the D50 dose, 50% of those patients will have that negative side effect of radiation. Let's say it's radiation pneumonitis. M represents the slopeness of the dose response, how fast the slope is of the dose response curve. What you don't see here is the dependence on the volume. So this is a very simple expression that assumes that the normal structure received uniform dose. This is usually not the case because the normal tissue lie within the dose gradient and penumbra of the dose. So the more generic expression for the parameter T is where we use the general equivalent uniform dose, and I'm not explaining this term within this lecture, that actually depends on the volume and dose distribution within the normal tissue, meaning that some parts of the normal tissue, such as lung, may be receiving larger doses, and some parts of the normal tissues, again, such as lung, will be receiving lower doses. To make the matter even more complicated, not all tissues are equal. And one of the questions we could ask is, what about the organ architecture and its effect on the response to irradiation? Very briefly, maybe many of you are already familiar, we by large divide normal tissues in parallel structures and serial structures. This is once again a simplification, and some organ can be 50-50% of each. In parallel structures, if some organ subvolumes are inactivated due to irradiation, the organ can still perform its tasks. Example is liver, lung, kidney. So even if I, after irradiation, knock off parts of the lung, the patient can still breathe. But in serial structures, if any one subvolume is inactivated due to irradiation, the function of the whole organ is impaired. Example is a spinal cord. So if I inactivate a volume of the spinal cord, then the patient movements will be affected. So the relative seriality model has a different mathematical expression, but once again, I want to show you that we have again exponential dependence on the dose delivered to the organ relative to the D50 dose. Once again, this is the dose that produces 50% chance of complication. We summarize this over all individual subvolumes receiving different dose DI, but I now have a different parameter S here, which varies from 0 to 1, and this parameter would vary depending on whether the organ is a serial organ or the parallel organ. So I will summarize once again. In Lyman or Lyman-Kucher-Berman model, TD50 is the dose that leads to the 50% complication probability. Slope of the structure, M, determines the steepness of the dose volume curve, and the parameter N is the volume of the structure determining the effective volume dependence in the model. In the relative seriality model, it is the gamma parameter that represents the steepness of the dose response curve for the structures. So if I change TD50, I am also changing the slope of the dose response curve. If I am changing M, I am also changing the slope of the dose response curve. If the volume of the structure N or S is 0, organ has a serial structure with limited to no volume dependence, But if N or S is 1, organ has a parallel structure and will have a strong volume dependence. But as you can see, I need to know what the TD50 is, what M is, N is, gamma is, or S is. So the big question, million-dollar question is, where do I get all this data to fit within these models? And this is basically where Imami and Berman-Kucher data papers have provided to us. So in this case, I'm just showing one of the tables. I have a critical structure, organ at risk. I have the reference volume, which I'm using the whole volume to be irradiated as the reference volume. I have the parameters N, TD50, but the TD50 depends on the endpoint. So for example, for bladder, I am looking for a constricture or volume loss in the bladder. In colon, I'm looking at the obstruction or ulceration of the colon. In lung, my endpoint is pneumonitis. If I am looking at the different side effects, these endpoints will be different, and therefore these parameters will be different as well. And this is really the big difficulty of radiobiological modeling. So really the model parameters are the weak point of the model. Going back to the Imami papers, yes, the committees of experts reviewed the known data and provided the guidelines, but look at the year 1991. At that time, we have comparatively poor ability to deliver precisely those, and we didn't have any modern technique like image-guided radiotherapy or intensity-modulated radiotherapy. We had a worse ability to measure the dose actually delivered. Some data were estimated based upon the best guess principles. So quickly rewind to the current times. We have moved from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional treatment planning. We have state-of-the-art treatment techniques. We have higher energy beams produced by our linear accelerators. We have much better calibration protocols and ability to measure the dose. We now use increasingly combined hemoradiotherapy. And we have many, many, many more data nationally and internationally that report on tissue tolerance. As a result, a special expert group known as Quantec, which is an abbreviation for Quantitative Analysis of Normal Tissue Effects in the Clinic, has been founded. It's a large committee of experts convened by the American Association of Physicists in Medicine and Estro, and they updated guidelines that were published in your red journal in the supplement, and it contains 16 organ-specific papers. So Quantec was formed to provide critical overview of the current state of the knowledge, produce practical guidelines, and identified future research avenues. This is the reference, and again, it's a must for everyone to read and have in your data collection of papers. These are the organ-specific papers, starting from brain to optical nerve, brain chiasm, going through head and neck organ, lung, heart, esophagus, liver, finishing with rectum, penile bulb, and bladder. And each section is talking about clinical significance, endpoints, challenges in defining the volumes, conducts revision of those volume data, looks at factors that are affecting the risk, and then provides some mathematical biological modeling. I will show you now a case of radiation dose volume effects in the lung, and will take you through 2 graphs. The top graph is fairly easy to understand. In this graph, we have probability. For example, in case that you are treating lung cancer in that patient, the typical side effect for that patient would be development of the radiation pneumonitis. And the group has put together lots of clinical trials. And what you are looking at is the mean lung dose in grays and the probability of pneumonitis. And what we see that most of that international data is really falling on the same graph. And the dashed curve here is the line of best fit. So it's telling me that, for example, if the mean lung dose is 20 grays, the probability that that patient will develop the radiation pneumonitis is 20%. The second graph is more related to how we prescribe. You know that we prescribe the dose to the tumor, but the clinicians will also prescribe dose constraint. We have an interesting unit here. This is called, for example, V20, and it describes the volume of the lung receiving 20 gray dose. So the clinician will define a constraint that will limit the lung volume in cubic centimeters that can be exposed to 20 grays. Here we have the incidence of radiation pneumonitis versus Vx in percentage. So now the individual studies are split up, whether they used V40 constraint, V30 constraint, V20 constraint, or even V13 or V5 constraint. So I'm talking here V40, volume of those that receive 40 grays. And what do you see? If the lung receives 40 grays, the incidence of pneumonitis increases. And if that volume that receives 40 grays increases, this incidence of pneumonitis goes nearly vertically out. So there is a strong dose volume dependence. However, if I keep the dose constraint at 13 grays, then the volume that as it's being increased, but being increased to 13 grays, the incidence of radiation pneumonitis is rising only very slowly. So this type of graph is a better breakdown of this generic graph to allow doctors in clinic to prescribe the dose volume constraints for their patients. So lessons from Quantec, we are not only looking at the spatial and anatomical distribution of data, we are looking at the dose volume histogram data, and we are trying to use that dose volume histogram data either to calculate the global mean dose or to calculate the single constraints such as V20, which is the volume that is permitted to be exposed to 20 grays. But we also can use this dose volume data to compute the normal tissue complications probability models that I have shown you previously. This is also allowing me potentially to have alternative prescription approach. I do not have to necessarily prescribe the dose to the tumor, but I can selectively dose escalate patients to any tumor dose up to some threshold for normal tissue complications. So I can give as much dose to the tumor for as long that I am not exceeding the threshold doses for normal tissue complications. The disadvantage of this could be that for bigger tumors, you will only receive lower tumor doses. So ideally, where do I see the biological treatment plan optimization to go? And I have borrowed this from my collaborator and colleague, Alan Nahum. They estimate with his PhD student, Uzan, 5 stages in development of biological-based treatment. Level 1 is using individualized prescription on ISO equivalent NTCP basis. On level 2, we are looking at individualized dose prescription, but also individualized fractionation on an isotoxic basis, that each patient will have the same amount of normal tissue complications probabilities. On level 3, we should actually use the DVH data and calculate NTCP and TCP models in the inverse planning algorithms. On level 4, we should be including more patient-specific information from functional imaging, such as hypoxia or tumor proliferation in the treatment planning. And on level 5, we should be even including more individual patient biology, such as genomics, added to the above. So I think by large, many departments are only on level 1 and level 2. I'm hoping that we are moving to level 3. And if the rise of the artificial intelligence and functional imaging, we can move to level 4 and level 5. Let me give you a brief example on level 3. So I will be talking about the practical application of the BioSuite software that was developed by Alan Nahum and Julian Uzan. So it is a software that computes normal tissue complication probability and tumor trope complication probability using various radiobiological models, and can suggest radiobiological optimal prescription doses and fractionation scheme with limited toxicity. It is a shareware that is downloadable, and it allows you for customization of fractionation and prescription dose. I will use a clinical example of a 5-year-old female patient with a brain tumor known as medulloblastoma, and we perform 2 treatment plans, one with photons, intensity modulated photon radiotherapy, and one with protons using intensity modulated proton radiotherapy. The organs and risks, for example, are brainstem, cochlea in the ear, optical structures, and pituitary gland. So in our work, what we have done, we have obtained cranial pediatric data set, which we imported into the treatment planning system. We created the 2 treatment delivery models, looking at the dose distribution models, and we have exported these dose volume histograms to the BioSuite software. And in the BioSuite software, we have calculated the normal tissue complication probability for further analysis. So I have removed the whole distribution from these images to make it a bit easier to look at. Here I have my critical structure, and in this case, the critical structure is sitting next to the brain stem. And the endpoint in the brain stem is necrosis. Now I have the proton therapy on the left and photon therapy on the right, and I want to see what is the risk of brainstem necrosis between these 2 treatment plans. So from any treatment planning system, whether it's Pinnacle, Eclipse, Research, you can export your dose volume histograms as differential dose volume histograms, and you can export them either as text files or you can bring them into the Excel spreadsheets. This is really what the BioSuite treatment software, your graphical user interface looks like. You can select a endpoint of interest. For example, I can look at the radiation pneumonitis, or I can look at the complications of the esophagus. I can select the model. For example, I want to use Lyman-Kutcher model, and then I can enter these parameters: slope, TD50, volume effect, and alpha-beta ratio. I can then play with these individual models and have a look how it affects the calculated normal tissue complication probability. So when you are looking at TD50, I am changing individual radiosensitivity based on gender, or maybe that patient also has a chemotherapy delivered to them, which make them more sensitive to additional delivered radiation dose. I can model alpha-beta ratios, looking at intrinsic cellular radiosensitivity of that organ. I can look at the steepness of the dose response curve. I can play with the volume effect depending whether I'm dealing with the esophagus, which is a serial organ, or lung, which is a parallel organ. And I can also select the relative seriality model, and I can play with the gamma parameters, but I can use the literature reported data, such as those from the Quantec model. So here are some of the examples. We looked at the brainstem. Our endpoint is necrosis. And these are the parameters that we have found in literature, and these are the ranges of the data. We put it into the software, and the software will then calculate the results for us. You can import your DVHs. You can also give the dose prescription, how many fractions the patient has, what is the total dose, how many fractions per day, and how many fractions per week. And we used Lyman-Kucher-Berman model. And the NTCP results were calculated that proton therapy will give you a risk of 0.2% of brainstem necrosis versus roughly 2% of brainstem necrosis when you are using the IMRT, intensity modulated photon radiotherapy. And the software will also recreate from your data the differential dose volume histograms. So this is the end. My final remarks. Radiobiology absolutely impacts on treatment planning, and its impact in our clinical practice will be increasing. The delivered radiation dose is only start of the journey and part of the journey. New radiobiological data needs to be collected through clinical trials and must be implemented into the treatment planning systems and other model-based calculations. And hopefully more individualization will be possible that will consider patient-specific parameters. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Bezak, for your very, very detailed and excellent lectures. I couldn't follow part of it, but I'm sure the participants can. All right. Prof, do you have any questions or posts that you would like to?
I think I have sent one via email, but I might have been far too late.
It is there. Can I launch it now?
Yes, please.
All right. Okay, I hope you can see the post on your screen. And it's also projected on the screen so the people on YouTube can see it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, tricky question. Okay, I think we can end polling.
Okay, sure.
And the correct answer is the first answer. So 43% of the responders did get the right answer. Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, excellent.
Excellent. Okay, let's thank Professor Eva Bezak again for the very comprehensive lectures. We hope we have chance to attend your class like face to face. It will be more interactive, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will definitely recommend that people should look at the literature. I have reduced equations as much as I could. There are different variations of these equations, and it just takes a bit of time to get through them. And as I said, if people are maybe not keen on the equations, then you can download a software such as BioSuite and use that for the calculations of the NTCP. So the equations are all programmed there. But you have to be still very careful. Garbage in, garbage out. You still have to understand what that software does and ensure that you are putting in biologically plausible data. And where you get that data from, as I mentioned before, that is the million-dollar question. You will get it. You can either go to Imami, Lyman, Kucher, Berman data, or you can read them from Quantec. So, you know, the TD50, I can get the mean dose from that graph that will lead to 50% probability of patients developing radiation pneumonitis. When I'm treating, let's say, children and young adults, I may want to have, at the moment we're treating boys and girls the same, but girls tend to be more sensitive to radiation. So I may want to play with the software, reducing TD50 to see whether I should be stricter with my constraints in regards to normal tissue irradiations to mitigate the side effects in girls.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Prof. Prof, are those software free?
Yes, it is free. Yes.
I see. That's nice. Okay. We do have some questions from our chat room. Asil, do you mind to project the screen, please, for the questions?
What I would like to say that the treatment planning providers are improving, and whether Eclipse or Pinnacle or Monaco, Electa, they now have some CP, NTCP calculations available. However, what I found with Pinnacle, that it only allows you to do standard fractionation, so it doesn't have the flexibility that BioSuite has.
So the BioSuite is the open source, right, Prof?
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. RaySearch has just released their Radiobiology. We were just lucky that in my department we have just purchased it. So I'm very excited to look at what predictions it can give us, how good it is.
Yeah.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Hope we can get some updates from you after you tried it.
Yes.
Yeah, Prof. And Echo, there are some questions here. Maybe among you can decide which question you would like to answer. The first question is, can you elaborate more on the 6R? Yeah, we have received some comments, the same comments, so they would like to know more about the 6R.
Yeah, I think the 6Rs probably, as I shared with you just now, there are two things which is coming to the pictures recently. One is the reactivation. Another one will be the... So unfortunately, I don't have much literature to share with you guys. I'm not sure, Eva, if you have anything.
The other 6R could be the remote bystander effect.
Yeah.
So we have been dealing with radiation therapy very purely from physics point of view and maybe some radiation chemistry. And we have been perhaps ignoring the biological responses. So as I mentioned, when you look at the TCP model, one surviving clonogen will result in reduction of TCP to 37%. So absolute treatment failure. But this is not what we see in a daily practice, because the immune system and bystander effect, where cells that have not been irradiating might still decide to undergo programmed cell death, such as apoptosis, due to the radiation insult on the bulk of the tumor.
Right. And for the reactivation of anti-tumor immune response, is it that one more on the current, as we say, the precision medicine? Sorry, just comments on the reactivation. So I think there is a still developing stage, is it, Prof?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you see even 7th R. So, but the 5R would be your standard. So, but as we understand biology a bit more, then people are adding more and more R's into it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Prof, just a side topic. You say that when we progress, people will introduce more and more R.
Yes.
I see. So,
as we understand biology more, yes. Absolutely.
I see. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Elsie. Okay, the second question, how can we validate this model to the real dose? To which extent do you consider this model to be close to the real clinical practice?
Well, when you do a treatment plan, you put real dose in it.
Yeah.
That's your real treatment planning. That's how you're going to treat your patient. Everything about it's real.
Okay, thank you for the answer.
Yes.
Yeah. Next, since the Quantec, I think it's Quantec, is meant for MRT and 3DRT, will you suggest it to be used for SBRT or hypofractionated regime?
That's a very good question. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. And I believe Dr. Wendy Harris will be talking in the next lecture about hypofractionated and hyperfractionated regimens. Yes. There are ways how you can, I really couldn't cover it all, how you can, and Wendy will cover it more, how you can translate one fractionation regimen into another. The best regimen that we understand is the 2 gray per fraction fractionation model. So often we want to know, how does these different fractionations, 4 grays per fraction or 1.5 grays per fraction, translate to the same biological endpoint as the 2 gray fractionation. And this is known as biologically effective dose. But I have tortured you with too many equations, and there was no way that I could include it in this presentation. So you can do some of the comparisons, but can you really use IMRT or 3D CRT data for SBRT? You have to take it with a pinch of salt. And what it means that it's nearly like a never-ending circle, or hopefully it's not a circle, but sort of we are moving up on a spiral, that whenever a new treatment technique comes, you are back to collecting patient data and collecting patient outcomes, as I mentioned at the beginning of my lecture, and you start rebuilding those TCP and TCP curves from scratch. Yes, be careful so that not everything always applies.
Yes, thank you very much, Prof.
And I love the last question. I have actually removed 10 slides of my presentation, and maybe Wendy will cover it, about the combined treatments and how you translate brachytherapy dose. We would need another couple of lectures to answer this question. It can be done, but you have to do more complex conversion of doses from brachytherapy to add it to external beam radiotherapy.
Yeah, sorry, Prof. Actually, for the last question, the question is incomplete. The real question is, in some patients, if there is a treatment gap after 3 weeks
Yes.
of the first brachy, how
Yes.
much dose do we need to increase to achieve the same effect like normal treatment?
Yeah. Well, that's basically what I was trying to get to. Those equations, and one of my students in the past did exactly this as a PhD for breast brachytherapy and breast external therapy combination. These equations then have the time gap between those two treatments. And based on that time gap, you can again play with the modeling, because you will have, when you stop treating and you left some clonogens in, the tumor will start regrowing. So if you have a large treatment gap, you cannot finish with the same number of fractions, because the tumor has increased in its volume and number of clonogens. So you would have to increase number of fractions. And this needs to be done on a case-by-case basis, where you would use the appropriate equations to tell you how to increase the total number of fractions to account for that treatment gap. Your clinicians should be able to do so. And I believe we have a clinicians talking next week from Malaysia that will be talking exactly about this point.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we should keep the question for next week.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
All right. Okay. Next question. Why not use machine learning or deep learning approach for dose personalization?
I think that will happen. Yeah, we just not quite there yet. And one of the things is that we really need these national and international registries to be able to do so. There is already a registry between Belgium, Netherlands, and Germany that is looking at lung radiation pneumonitis following a lung cancer irradiation. Includes SABRE, where they are looking at how they can predict radiation pneumonitis with from a CT imaging data post-radiation therapy. So Hansfield units will change as a result of irradiation. And based on that Hansfield unit change in a lung CT data sets, using artificial intelligence, they can predict which patients are at risk of developing grade 2 radiation pneumonitis. So it's definitely happening.
Thank you very much for the insight. The next question, mention on GEUD for inverse planning optimization. Do we have the updated data on alpha values for each organ at risk?
No, we don't necessarily have updated alpha beta values for each organ at risk. So IMAMI data or Quantec is the best that we have. Currently, there is a Pentec organization, which is the pediatric equivalent of Quantec, that is summarizing data for pediatric patients. You can get your own alpha values from your clinic. And you will have to look at, this is what we use for prostate, and you will have to collect data for the patients that come to your clinic. This is often time consuming and often quite complex, because if you lose patients to follow up, they don't come for follow-up treatments, then you do not collect enough data. And once again, that comes back to the national and international registries. So be part of the registries and provide analysis of the data in the registries to get the updated alpha values. And search literature. Pentec just published last week 2 new papers on salivary glands and overall scope of their projects in the Red Journal.
I see. Thank you so much for the suggestion. Prof, what do you think the
generalized EUD.
Yeah.
Generalized EUD, once again, I removed it from my presentations because I just could not get through to it. Generalized EUD is definitely used for inverse planning optimization.
Yeah.
And it's pushing the I don't know whether I can quickly share the data, share the screen. Open. Can view page 100%. Sorry. Can I share the screen again?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
So if you want to really look at the generalized EUD and lots of these models, my recommended literature is AAPM report number 166.
166.
Yes, and let me see, share. Okay, can you see my screen again?
Yes,
Yes.
we can see.
So this is a bit of a contemplation from the report AAPM 166, where it's sort of looking at using different cost function when you are optimizing the dose volume histograms for serial type organ and the parallel type organ. So in the parallel type organ, you are trying to reduce even the mean dose to the large volumes. So I'm pushing the cost function all across the dose region because I want to minimize the volume exposed to the dose. In serial type organ, such as the spinal cord, I'm trying to minimize the maximum dose. So I'm putting the bigger weight to minimize the exposure of smaller volumes, this is the volume here, to the large doses. Because if I inactivate just one link in that chain, I can cause severe side effects and inactivate the organ function. So you will use GUD with different cost function to optimize your DVHs. And for serial organs, you are limiting the maximum dose. And for parallel organs, your you are trying then to limit the overall dose to the large fractions of the volume. That's the easiest way how I can explain it in this short space. Let me see whether I can stop sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prof.
Can you stop sharing for me?
Oh, all right. Let me
I
try.
can't see. Maybe I can do escape.
I'm sorry, I don't think I can. Okay, I can. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
excellent.
Yeah, stop it. All right. Thank you so much, Prof. We do have other questions in Zoom. Okay, let me
Yeah.
check in YouTube.
Maybe I have tired everyone to death and we can give everyone a break.
Yeah, sure.
But your lecture is very interesting.
Yeah, there's so much to learn actually. We still have 164 participants here.
Yes,
and
and
also,
I would again say, please do not worry. I was really trying to simplify as much as I could, but it's not that easy. It's not that easy to simplify everything. You will have follow-on lectures, and we really structure this course in a certain way for a reason. So I'm hoping that the subsequent lecturers, presenters will again give you a bit of a revision and expand on those terms that were introduced to you today.
yes, thank you very much. We really appreciate your effort. Thank you. Maybe just one last chance. We still have 10 minutes to end, but we can end here. One last chance to anybody who wants to ask questions. Okay, I see the last question just came in. All right, sorry. Can you take one more, Eva?
Yes, sure.
Okay, regarding the generalized EUD, how do we appreciate the GUD in comparison to physical dose for OAR dose evaluation? And how do we convince the clinicians?
I haven't it's sort of hard to talk to me about this because I haven't shown the GUD in my lecture. But again, equivalent uniform dose. Lots of the it comes to the. Let me explain. You have a uniform dose to the target volume. The normal structures, because especially with the photons, you have the exponential attenuation of X-rays. The normal tissues will get non-homogeneous dose. They will not get uniform dose. Non-homogeneous dose is then responsible for that integration or summation in the normal tissue complications equations, because I have to sum up all the regions of the normal tissue organ receiving different fraction of doses for certain volumes. Some part of the lung can be in the high dose region, and other parts of the lung that are away from the target volume will receive low doses of radiation. So working with non-homogeneous is difficult. So we do a trick which is called equivalent uniform dose, which is a surrogate. It's like a mean dose or uniform dose, as if that organ, whole lung, was exposed uniformly, but it gives me the same probability of negative side effect as my non-homogeneous distribution. So I reduce my dose volume histograms to, let's say, EUD of 20 grays. That would give me the same probability that there will be 20% complication rate that that patient will develop radiation pneumonitis. So sometimes that's a bit more palpable, easy to understand value, rather than very complex inhomogeneous dose distribution. Even when you see that dose volume histogram, how do you actually understand it? What does it really mean? Yes. So therefore, GUD is actually sometimes easier, even when I was showing you those two graphs, that if I have an EUD of 20 grays, I can look at that Quantec data and can assume, okay, this would lead to 20% probability. So once you can convert the data to GEUD, you can look even in the data tables and graphs and estimate the probability. How you convince clinicians? That's really very hard. We are all creatures of habit. And of course, clinicians are very risk averse. So they have a system that works for them. And they will tell you, I have been treating like this for 20 years and I had good results. I'm not prepared to change.
Yeah, that's very true.
So that's very hard. But I think it's not necessarily just us. It should really, clinicians also have in their clinical training, they have radiobiology. They have to pass it as part 1 exams. So all of these should be included into clinical training. And clinicians should be made feel comfortable. And maybe, we should use radiobiological optimization maybe as a additional information, supporting information that will not tell clinician this is how you must treat, but will assure clinician that these two plans, this one gives me better NTCP, therefore I am choosing this plan to treat a patient. Because of course, I didn't even touch this. When you do inverse planning, you have multiple solutions of dose delivery that will end up with very similar dose volume histograms. And, there could be, just slightly shifted the curves. How do you know which one is better? The one that gives you better NTCP, lower NTCP for a patient.
Okay, so it's always a lower NTCP. Okay, thank you so much.
For given TCP, of course, yes. You
Mm.
don't want to compromise TCP.
Mm. Yes. Okay, thank you so much. And thank you all the participants for your questions. One last word from Prof. Eva?
Yes.
Any?
No,
One
I
last
just
word?
want
No?
to say thank you everyone for your attention. I do appreciate that this has been quite complicated. If I didn't explain anything clearly enough, my apologies, but it does take some time. It's not intuitive. It does take some time to study radiation biology and understand its implications. So hopefully you will have more revisions in the couple of Fridays to come, and it will be much more clear at the end of this workshop. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Prof. Bezak. Dr. Ng, anything to share?
I really learned a lot from Professor Bezak today, because when we putting this course together, we're thinking to learn something which is actually because radiobiology is actually we are applying every day, but we kind of like this is not very obviously that we are actually applying. So we have to we have to learn. I think for myself, I have to relearn about this radiobiology. And thank you very much, everyone, for participating. And hopefully, for the next 2 Fridays, 4 more lectures will be much more interesting. So I hope everybody can join us. Thank you. Over to you, Chai Hong.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Agha, for an excellent first presentation to introduce the topic.
Thank you so much, both Aecom and Professor Bezak. We'll see you again next week. All right. Okay, to all the participants, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. And as Prof. Bezak explained, we try to split the lecture so that it's not like heavily, putting down the too much contents on you, so that you can digest. And then next week we come back again, we can have more discussions, right? Asil, can you please move to the next slide? Yeah, so lastly, I just need a collaboration from all of you. Could you please fill up the feedback form? You can either use this QR code, or we will post the link in the chat. So please help us, give us some feedback, give us some comments, and also please indicate your email address and the name to be included in the certificate, and we'll email you the certificate. Thank you very much, everyone, and hope you come back again next Fridays and also the subsequent Fridays. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, Prof. Eva and
Yes,
Aecom.
thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you
very
so
much.
much.
All the best. Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
Asel and Hani.
Enjoy your football match, Prof.
Yes, I'm going.
So this is Adelaide team, is it? Today?
Yes, one of the Adelaide teams. That's
Wow.
fine. Yes.
Okay. All the best. Have fun.
Thank
you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Your evening.
Thank you, everyone. Hope to see you again next Friday. And thank you those who joined from YouTube. Thank you, Asu and Hani, who are helping at the back scene. Hani, are you doing okay?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, great.
Okay. Everything smooth on YouTube?
Yes, I already post the feedback form there, the link.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Asil, you okay?
Oh, yes, I'm
All right,
okay.
good. Okay.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
Doctor.
Okay, there's one question from Arif Effendi. Where can we find the recorded sessions? So the recorded section will be shared on YouTube. So we have our account, ACOM account, where you can find all our recorded lectures in YouTube. We will send you the link after this.
I will share the YouTube page.
Okay. Oh, I just received a comment message from Virginia. Virginia, who is joining from IEA in Vienna. She was with us earlier on. She said it's a great session. She really enjoyed it and hope you will have something on radiobiology and interventional in the future.
That's great suggestion. Thank you, Virginia.
She's not here. She's left slightly earlier just now, but she sent me a message in Facebook. Virginia has been very supportive to our activities in the Asia Oceania region.
That's great.
Is Ina still here? Profeng didn't manage to join us. He got another live webinar.
Yeah, I think the same time.
Yeah, yeah, and we missed his session. Anyone want to share anything? We still have 86 participants here. I see Zhang. Zhang, are you here, Zhang? Wei Lung. Zhang, are you here? Zhang Wei Lun. Oh, we forgot to take photo.
Yeah, though I just remembered after.
Uh-oh. Did you take a screenshot just now, Asil?
No.
No. All right. Okay. So next session we should remember that.
Yeah, I think we'll next session so that everybody can open their videos so we can do a screenshot of
Yeah.
everybody together.
Yeah. Yeah. We're doing very well on the timing. So we finished like even 5 minutes earlier. And I think our participant is quite good. We have 170 on Zoom and 80 on YouTube.
Yes, it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's a very good response. Aecom. So can you share the session, the next session, the Friday one?
Okay.
So you'll be the moderator for the next Friday?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Asia will be helping as well.
Right. Can we fix a date or shall I ask the speakers for the next training session?
Yeah, I think we need to ask them for their presentation slides, and also
Right.
we need to do a rehearsal, maybe 2 days earlier.
Right. Probably I will send them an email for the suggested date, and then we come to a date and everybody can can join.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
And for Prof. Fuad, we haven't received his biography, right?
Yes, perhaps I will send to you again.
You have received it?
Yes, actually it was in BM, so I've translated into English.
Oh, okay, okay. So if you can send to me and Asil, then we can put it down in the slide.